Hey everybody, this is Uncle Grumpy, and this is Grumpy's Corner. Today we are at the state capitol with our fearless floor leader, Jon Echols. Jon, thank you for coming back on the show. I appreciate it.
Happy to,
Uh,
happy to.
Is this your first day back since you're getting ready for the new session, or?
No, I've been up here a lot during the. We never really take a break. Now it's kind of fun today though because we're the only ones up here.
Yeah,
It's a snow day. We got the
yeah.
place to ourselves.
I noticed you were still unpacking things in picture frames. Do you like unpack everything and leave in case you don't win election?
Well, that's right.
Do you
Now,
have to evacuate just in case?
wouldn't have been a bad idea. Travel light.
Yeah.
No, we finally. I mean, the last time you were in here, we had these boxes in my
Right.
office, but because all the construction.
Yeah.
I just got my boxes down, so
Okay.
finally we can actually have people in my office and put some stuff back on the walls.
Okay, so you get to put up all your awards and your Johnny did good.
We got a couple of those.
Okay, I'm sure you do.
We'll throw those up.
Speaking of which, I heard you were in Gore recently.
Or Grove, yeah.
Grove, can you tell me about that?
So we were in Grove yesterday. It was myself, Josh West, Scott Fatgetter.
Now, Grove is where? That's
By Grand Lake.
so that's the northeastern
northeast.
part of the state.
Northeastern part of the state.
Okay.
Literally, it's in a little peninsula in the middle of Grand Lake.
Mm-hmm.
The city council asked us to come talk to them about some ordinances they passed, and I was very proud of the city council reaching out, wanting some other perspectives, which was great.
Was this one of the cities that was trying to do what most of us would consider overreaching with the regulations?
Well,
Most of us being us, not you, the lawmakers, but us, the citizens.
Well, in fairness, me too. That would consider
Okay.
that. I mean, I was very careful. I don't tell a city council member what to do. They're
Right.
elected. They're elected. They represent their people. I did give them my opinion, which was that if they were sued, that they would lose. And after that meeting, they voted to rescind that ordinance to wait to see what happens in the legislature, which was the right call.
Now, I have to say, you sat right here at this table a few months ago when Tulsa was about to do that, and you said the same thing. You said if they did this, they would get sued and they would lose every time. So, I mean, we know they heard you. So,
I told Grove the same thing, and I wanted where I want to be nice though is again they invited us down there to talk. That was a big difference. So when somebody invites you into their home and asks your opinion, you're not rude about it afterwards. So I want to be nice to the city council. They listened. They asked some really good questions. I gave them my opinion. I mean, obviously, Grove's a 3-hour drive for me. That's not my area. I did
Right.
it because I
Right.
cared, because Representative West wanted somebody to come, and
Yeah.
I think they made the right vote. I mean, I think cities they don't need overreach right now. I mean,
Right.
people voted on it, and there's been lots of lawsuits, and cities have been losing.
yeah, I want to give a shout out to Ron Durbin
Yeah.
for
Yeah.
being the one that stirred up the most angst about these city issues. Probably what got them to decide they needed to reach out to somebody with some better answers.
Absolutely, it was. No. As a matter of
So-
fact, yeah, them talking, Ron saying he was going to sue, and then we had what I think was a great meeting. We had kind of a good back and forth. I mean, you know me, Grumpy. I said some stuff that people liked, and I said some stuff that made people mad. But I just told them what I thought.
Don't we all?
That's right. And then by the time we were done, they rescinded the ordinances, which I think were the right call. It's time. The people have voted. We're about to come into legislative session. My advice over and over again is just hold off, see what happens in the legislature. Don't overreach right now. The cities don't overreach, and I think they made the right call. And again, I got to commend the city council as an elected official to reach out and just get some other advice. That was a good move. I mean, that was very
Unfortunately,
impressive.
too many of them, once they get elected, they think that they've got all the answers, and that's why they got elected.
They don't listen anymore, and that's where I got to be careful too, because I'm a state legislator. It's not my job to go tell an elected city council person
Right.
what to do.
Right.
I just advise. I tell them.
So
what
now
I think
you
is happening.
say you've explained to them that, or advised them to wait because we're going back into session now, and I know a lot of people that have done things like waited on construction because they think that there's going to be a new book of rules that come out in February. Now, we've talked about this before. Could you possibly explain some of how this actually will roll out? Because everybody needs to know this isn't going to be one day we don't have rules, the next day we do. It's going to be a slow process.
I'm glad you brought it up that way. So what's going to happen on January 15th? All the bills are going to be filed. So give me a couple days to read them. It's going to be about 3,000 bills, but closer to about 1,500 in the House. I got to read, and another 1,500 in the Senate. So we'll know what all's been filed. We come back into session the first Monday in February. House bills are considered the first 6 weeks. So people are going to have lots of notice. These are the bills being considered. Here's where they are in the process. I know you're grumpy. You're going to be telling people exactly where they are in the process, and you're going to be talking to me about the ones you don't like and the ones you do.
Well, yes, I am.
I'm positive.
That's all I can say.
Yeah.
Yes, I am.
So, and then it will move over middle of March. The chambers will switch bills. So first 6 weeks, Senate's hearing Senate bills, House is hearing House bills. The next 6 weeks, that's the first time, end of March, a bill has a possibility of passing both chambers.
So there's absolutely no possible way for any regulations to come out before mid-March?
Mid-March. There is one exception. The only exception is the testing and labeling recommendations.
So you think that will be coming out even faster?
There's a possibility we will try to get that done early in February. And the reason we will try to get that done early in February, the reason I feel comfortable moving it up in the process is because it's going to be what the committee's already recommended, which was agreed by the vast majority of both the anti-788, pro-788, the Democrats, Republicans. Everybody kind of knows that's coming. So people need to be looking at those recommendations. Now, let's say, though, we do get them passed. So we get those labeling and testing recommendations, and they're passed in February, which would be the fastest thing. Then it's got to be signed by the governor. And even then, that law doesn't go into effect till 90 days after the governor's signature.
Okay.
So there's still going to be 90 days. The only exception there would be if there was an emergency. I don't think we're going to put an emergency on that bill because people need 90 days to ramp up. I mean, they need 90 days.
Right.
If we were to say, by golly, today you can sell, it doesn't have to be labeled this way and tested, but tomorrow you can't. Well, what we've done is we shut down the industry completely for at least some period of time. So there's still going to be 90 days. So I would say if I was advising, and again, all I can do is advise. And remember, guys, I'm not right on everything, but I do my best to give the good advice. I would be planning by the 1st of May to be having labeled and tested products. So look at those labeling requirements that we've passed, the bicameral recommendations. It's things like cannabinoids, terpenes. I'm really proud of our labels. You had a lot to do with those.
So you don't see it changing much from what we came up with back then?
It's already been agreed. Plus, we have the best testing. I've been really proud of our testing and labeling that we came up with really as a group. You know, and I've been bragging on the industry. The industry came in and said, we're okay with testing and labeling. What they got in return from the committee, remember the first testing requirements had them testing for at least 4 heavy metals, which were very expensive testing that didn't exist in the soil in Oklahoma. They had taken those out of California. So what the industry got in return is the group working with the ag and saying, no, we only need to test for these 4 heavy metals. What does that mean? Well, it means to the consumer, the cost will go down because those tests are not free. So if you're doing a bunch of testing that you don't need for, California is who they model it after. California has nuclear power. We don't. They have stuff in their soil we don't.
Right. So any cannabis from there would need to be tested for different stuff.
Absolutely.
We need to test for totally different stuff.
We need to test for what's in Oklahoma soil. We need to test. We need to test for what's in Oklahoma soil, and we need to test for. There's 2 levels of testing. Obviously the heavy metals, which is the stuff that's bad for you, and then the cannabinoid and the terpene testing. That's all about the patient.
Yeah, that's all useful information. That's all extremely helpful when you're trying to actually improve your life, which is what this is supposed to be about.
If you were trying to improve your health, that's the information you need, especially for people that aren't familiar, that don't know. Hey, I've been transparent. I didn't have a lot of knowledge before we got into all this. I've said over and over, I'm not an expert on marijuana. I'm still not an expert. I'm doing the very best I can to support it. And I think for people, that's where the labeling, I'm incredibly proud of that. We will have the best patient labeling in the nation. Like our dispensaries will be top notch from the patient's perspective, from them knowing, here's what I'm getting.
Okay. So you're saying May
1 is when I would plan on now guys.
And that would be testing. Okay?
Yes.
And then after that, regulations like security regulations. Do we see any of those coming? Is that something where I know that? Look, we've talked about this off camera. and some on. I know that the Unity plan has been kind of chopped up
Yep.
and is going through in pieces. I see some advantage to that. I see some
I
disadvantage to
agree.
that. So beyond testing and labeling, what's next after that? And I know beyond doctor protections.
Yes.
What else is coming? It's
So,
like security.
so security, and what people need with security is certainty. So we need some certainty on what type of security is going to be there. Now, I don't pretend to be a security expert without getting into too many details.
Well, I mean,
right
look,
now.
I'm being asked things like, will we be required to have a separate waiting room with walls, or can we have a rope like a bar where you can't go past a rope? That's what I mean by security. Does it have to be? I can't imagine there being any changes in the building code.
No, I don't think so either.
But just security wise, will they have to have an armed security on staff?
I
Things
doubt
like
that. So that's a good question. I doubt armed security. To me, that seems excessive. So I don't think we'll do it because to me it seems excessive. But I do think when it comes to those types of nuts and bolts security regulations, even if we were to pass, a wall versus a rope or something, the important thing for people to know is they'll have a minimum of 3 months to comply with whatever those security things are.
A really important one. I know one particular person that is concerned of building when the security, if that is put in, there'll also be what they're concerned about is an eye wash sink.
Yeah,
because it's a controlled substance.
they probably should have one. And
But do you see that becoming a requirement? Because that is their biggest holdout on because that's a gutting their whole floor. That's tearing the whole floor up.
There won't be an eye wash sink in, say, a dispensary. But if you're a lab, you're probably going to be required to have
I'm
an eye
referring
wash.
to a dispensary in this particular case.
I mean, they're not going to require an eye wash sink for a dispensary. I don't think that would be that's more like an OSHA deal at that point, and I think that's too far. But I do think if you're a lab, that's going to be required. I mean, what's going to be so the next step, we need to kind of take it in steps. I think the next thing that's going to come after that is what I'm going to call conflicts of interest. So we're going to pass some rules that make it clear you can't test your own stuff, and you can't send it to a laboratory that you have an ownership in. You can't write your test and grade your test. I joke all the time.
Right.
There's a reason my teachers didn't let me grade my own tests when I was at school. So we're going to do some of that stuff. We're going to do the lab regulations. We've talked about testing, but we haven't talked about the lab regulations. That's going to be next. What do labs, in order to qualify, what type of standards do they have to meet? Now, we talked a lot about I'm going to mess up the name of the standards, but the medical marijuana standards that were we talked a lot about that in there. Kind of what do they need? Wash sinks? Do they need to have a chemist or a pharmacist, or I'm sorry, chemist or a what kind of qualifications do lab directors have to have? A lot of effort's going to be put in that. When it comes to the nuts and bolts of, say, the dispensaries, what they should be more concerned about, I don't think we're going to get a lot into the daily operations. What does it have to look like? What does your ropes have to be? I think it's more going to be focused on what can you sell. So how much of your product can be non-marijuana? Can you sell paraphernalia? Can you sell those types of things? I think everybody agrees you should be able to sell things like T-shirts and stuff like that. We're not talking about that. But there's a big debate over whether or not it should just be strictly a dispensary. So similar to, you for the longest time you walked into a liquor store, you bought your cups somewhere else.
Right.
So before people get mad, I'm not equating cannabis and liquor. I'm just saying, using this example.
No, I wasn't going to accuse you of that, but I was going to point out how draconian that seems to me. The idea that it's 2019 and we can just now buy a corkscrew
That's right.
at a liquor store where you could buy a bottle of wine. I can't tell you how many times I've had people ask me to open a bottle of wine with a drill and a drill bit.
Because they don't have it.
Because they don't have a corkscrew. And I would hate to think that people are going to be back to using toilet paper rolls and aluminum foil for their medicine because they can't get a pipe.
And I don't think that's the direction we want to go. I think what you want to make sure is that a 7-Eleven doesn't open a dispensary in the back. So because you can see it going the other direction.
Okay.
You can see it if there's no regulations that you're going to sell. Why wouldn't 7-Eleven?
So maybe we limit it to things that are directly related.
Something like that. Now, I don't want to go. I don't know exactly what the compromise is going to be.
I want to
I'm
get into
saying-
that argument. I want to know what room that talk's going on because
Well-
I'm knocking on that door.
Well, we'll know all about it. I mean, when it's filed, those are the
Okay.
things. That's what I think will be the next move. And then, one of the dangers of these shows, but I do them with you all the time, is I talk about stuff before their decisions are made, and sometimes it freaks people out. But
Okay.
you have a way of asking me questions I'm not ready to answer, which is good. No, it's good. But I think that is the next thing. And then the other thing I would watch for is on the grow side, we're going to have the canopy limits debate, and we're going to have the debate on outside versus inside. I've said pretty clearly, I think at this point, outside grow needs to be allowed because we've already allowed it. There's
Right.
no way out of it now. Those will be the major issues. Don't think that and this is important for people to know, don't think that every regulation or every rule that ever is going to apply to the medical marijuana industry is going to get passed next session. I've said this all the time. California legalized medical marijuana 20 years ago,
Yeah.
and they had bills dealing with it this year. So that's going to continue to happen. And if it's done right, so the way I feel like it's been done with at least the committee, it's been more of a discussion
Mhm.
and not hammer from on high saying this is the way it's going to do.
Right.
And my goal is, as we discuss these issues, they continue to be more of a discussion. We try to build consensus. Can you make everybody happy? I'm keenly aware you cannot. Yeah, that can't
I'm finding
happen.
that out too.
Oh, believe me, I know. But I think what we can do is continue to have these discussions. And that's why these are important, so people know here's what's coming up, here's what to expect. And then I'm pretty accessible. I get people that email me. I probably don't respond as fast as everybody would like, but I mean, I get questions from all over the state, and
Yeah.
people know it. Sometimes my answer is I don't know, but sometimes I don't.
Well, before we wrap it up, I want to ask you about one more thing,
Okay.
just as a time frame. Paraphernalia, you mentioned that. The current shops that sell paraphernalia that aren't dispensaries have that conflict with 788. They're in that legal limbo. I had a store owner tell me he was worried if grandma comes in and asks for a pipe for her medical cannabis, he's going to have to tell her to leave. How soon could we see a resolution to that? Because I know a lot of people that are specifically asking that one question.
I have a bill. I can't run it as one bill, and I didn't create it, by the way. It was made for me. It's about this thick. That's all of the various statutes that need to be amended as a result of the passing 7088, and that's one of them. So we're going to be digging in next year a lot into those. Right now, I'll admit, I've focused on the big ticket items, stuff like making the rest of the criminal charges comply with 788,
Right.
$400 fine.
Right.
So those have been kind of the big ticket items that are getting most of my
Yes, I
attention.
agree. Those are certainly more important. We're talking about people's freedom there.
But they still have to be dealt
Right.
with.
I would just ask that we do put that on a front burner because that is businesses that are in limbo and that's their livelihood.
They need to know what to do, and they need to
Right.
know how to handle it. And I think that's appropriate. I think all of kind of those things they're going to get moved on, and I think we'll be doing that for at least 3 years. I mean, if we can make a significant chunk in the laws that need to be brought into compliance with 788, I'll be pretty happy. But we're not going to be able to get all of them. But I think things that directly affect people's livelihoods and that direct people's freedoms, those are going to, and actually not in that order. Freedoms and then livelihoods.
Right. Exactly.
But those are going to be the primary things that we're
Yeah.
going to deal with. And then, we're going to have to do everything from grumpy. I mean, think about the bankruptcy code, for example. Federal bankruptcy is not available for a cannabis business. We're going to have to set up essentially our own bankruptcy code that both, one, protects creditors, but two, protects the debtors. I mean, we've got to be able to protect everybody. This is receiver statutes that we don't deal with now. We've got to set up those systems. I do know we've niched those off to Senator Brooks, who's an excellent senator, shares some of my area on the Democrat side of the aisle, does an excellent job. He's looking at some of the kind of the bankruptcy type protections for creditors and debtors. These things there's a lot of issues that'll be popped up that maybe aren't as glamorous, but they're important too.
Looks like there's a lot of details to get to.
There will be.
Okay, John. Well, I want to thank you for coming on here. I
Thank
appreciate it, and hopefully you can come back on maybe in a couple of weeks so we can do this again.
Be happy.
Okay, folks, that's it. This is Uncle Grumpy from the Capitol. Stay grumpy. See you on the road.